And it's 11 o'clock. So welcome. This is, this is website. This is, we have a series of these. This is number 5 and maybe number 6, but at least number 5 in a series of lead generation webinars. We have 12 of them planned. And so I don't know if you've noticed, but they're showing up about once every 3 weeks or so on different topics. Today, we're talking about getting more leads from your website. And my name is Greg Chambers. And the 5 ways to get your website generating leads, it's not going to do it by itself, right? It needs traffic. So what this is about search engine marketing, and specifically what we're going to be talking about are some SEO concepts. We're going to work past things like, is your page tagged correctly? Is your website loading fast? Is it an adaptive? Is it does it look good on mobile? Is it professionally designed? Those things. We're going to assume that you have most of those done, and I'm going to try to come up with, or I came up with what I think are 5 new ones for you. Let me get the website going here. So this is the way we're going to do it. Is the plan is we're running through the introduction. I'm going to frame the content, which is my different way of saying the same thing I say every time, which is let's get on the same page. We're going to talk about a couple concepts up front just to make sure we're on the same page. And then I'll jump in and give you 5 ways, things you can do right now. And if you have questions, I am here to answer them. It should probably take somewhere around 20, 30 minutes to get through it all, unless you have a lot of questions. And before we begin, as a matter of fact, if there's anything that you want me to cover, throw it into the chat box, and Nui will help me manage that. Or you can use the Q&A box. We had somebody who used the Q&A successfully last time, so I know it works, and I'm happy to answer the questions. So this happened this last week. So I swear we designed this, and Nui can attest to it. We put the topics out about, I don't know, 6-7 months ago, and then this happened this week. President Trump put the search engines at the top of the news this week, and ranking and search, right? It's still a big deal. Most of us, it's almost like electricity. We don't even think about it anymore. When we're talking to people about how they found something, they go right into, they use their search engines, they use their phones so automatically that we've gone away from even thinking about it. It's kind of like asking my kid about Wi-Fi. They're like, what's Wi-Fi? They just assume that it's always there. I guess it's probably like me and electricity and a grandparent or something like that. So knowing that, and that it's still such a big deal, you should invest a little bit of time into learning how to make it work for you, is the concept behind all of this. Because what I found out, if nothing else this week, is, wow, there's a lot of people who really don't understand or have never really thought about how something as big as Google, how the search engine actually works. So we will cover some of that. But I assume that you're a little more familiar with how a search engine delivers its results. But we'll get into that. Just a couple of years ago, search was falling out of favor in a few circles, mostly because of social. So social was up, Facebook specifically, and it was the preferred lead generation tool to get visitors to your website. So your ability to generate leads, if I were delivering this in 2010, 2011, we would be talking a little bit more about generating some organic traffic from the social media sites. But that's been dropping, and search is coming back up. And the reason for that is simply as everybody charges for, right? We're always chasing after the free channels. And for a while, when Google was charging, Google was free, and then Google started running ads. And so we had to pay for our traffic. And then nobody liked that. And then, so Facebook was free. So we started using Facebook, and then Facebook started charging us. Now we're back to this. But the main concept I want to go after is when we were using social, it was interruptive, right? We were suspending user activity, but search is a continuation of user activity. The user is bringing their intent to the search engines. And that's what we're going to be focusing on here. So we are going to focus on how do we help them when they're using the search engines continue whatever it is, whatever task they were trying to accomplish by using our website. So that's the first concept I want to put on the table, the first frame. The second frame is this. You're living through an interesting time in that communication is changing, right? Voice to text especially is what I'm thinking about right now. And I just use Siri. I use Siri all the time now to dictate notes to myself. we're using Siri, we're using whatever it is that's on your phone. You're constantly talking to these machines. And when I dropped my kid off this last weekend in college, what did I find there? It was you're free, right? There's like, oh, do I get this for free? I'm like, well, nothing's free. But it was an Amazon Dot. I don't know if you've seen these things, but the little Amazon Alexa device in a tiny little format like this. And so he was, and I don't know if you've ever heard anybody try to talk to these things or if you've done it yourself, but I do find it comical as we're talking to it, because it's obvious. What I found out, there was a recent Radiolab. If you've ever listened to the Radiolab show, they were talking about robots and how the robots are talking to us, right? The idea is that these devices are supposed to be naturally processing our language. And what's actually happening is that we are changing how we talk to these devices to get the results that we want. So is it that the robots are becoming more human? Their conclusion was they were doing that Turing test. And their conclusion was that the robots were not necessarily becoming more lifelike, but we're just learning better how to speak in their language. The reason this is important is because your customers are doing the exact same thing. So if you're doing it, if I'm doing it, if my kid is learning it, and soon will be in the workforce, and hopefully in 4 short years, they're doing the same thing. And if we're going to try to help our users continue whatever task they set out to do on their in their searches, that's we just need the website to kind of match up with that, right? It doesn't need to be exact. And believe me, there's some people that are out there pushing exact natural language process syntax for your website. You don't need to go quite that far, I don't think, yet. But we do need to keep it in mind. So with those 2 things in mind, which is that social has dropped off, but search, the reason we like it is because it signifies user intent. We can determine what it is our users are really doing, versus social, we don't know exactly what they're doing. We're just trying to match up against their demographics. And that the way we talk to these devices is changing. Let's jump into 5 ways to get your website generating more leads. Well, these are the 5 ways, right? We'll talk about track it. We'll talk about the search console magic and the changes there. Keywords are a no-guess method, the way we do it here. And we'll match content to process. And then we've been testing a way to build instantly useful content, and I'll show you how to do that and give you what some of the results are there. So the first thing is tracking. So what it is, right? It's who knows, is this a Drucker thing? Management 101, you measure so you can manage, right? So the questions that we have, right? So everybody, we say, hey, you should at least be tracking analytics, and then be able to answer questions like, where does your traffic come from? What do they do on your site? How many take the actions that you want on the site? How much does it cost for each visitor? How much did it cost for each new visit? So there's visitors who come back multiple times, and there's new visitors. How much was it for each action that they took? How would you know if they converted? We consider all those to be leading indicators on our site. They've often been called also vanity metrics if you're trying to disparage them, but they're just measurements, right? They're measurements that help us so that we can manage the activity that's going on. And the big one, especially if you're talking to any, the CFO of your office, is how much did it cost for a customer, right? That's the one metric that they're probably interested in. The idea, right, is that we need to be able to measure it so that we know. Question 1, when people come to us and they say, we need the website to generate more leads. The question 1 is probably what just popped in your head, which is, how many leads do you have now? And how do you measure that? What is it now? What do you want it to be? These are the regular questions, right? And it's that delta, that difference between what is it now, what do you want it to be? That is where the investment justification comes from. The bigger the spread, the more we should expect to invest in it to get it to work for us. So another way of saying that, right, is the juice worth the squeezing? So, and you can use this to manage internally, but also we use it a lot to manage externally. The vendors that we use that are generating traffic for us have to adhere to these same metrics. So how do we do it? We start with analytics, get a feel for where we are now. So make sure that your analytics is hooked up and that you are pulling regular reports from it. story for you is we have a new e-commerce client that we were just working with, and the CFO was on the conference call, which makes every marketer nervous. But she was basically asking the question of why is it that, what are we spending the money on? How much have we spent? And there's no sales. And so what we had to walk her through, and what she actually got into and started enjoying, was the leading indicators that we're working on. Because this is a brand new site, so there's no history to work with. What we had to do was show her that we can manage what we measure by. The first steps were, could we get people to the site? Yes. How much is that going to cost? And then it was, could we get people to add these items to the cart? So how much was that? And so at the beginning, right, we could show her in the first few weeks, we were paying $400. It was really expensive to get somebody to add an item to the cart. But from that knowledge, we could drive that down. So right now we're getting add to carts at $40. So we're doing a lot better, but the first sale is not there. When that first sale comes through, it's going to be expensive. But then we can also start to work to drive that down. And so once the CFO was on board with that, then you could hear it in her mind. So she's like, okay, I get it. And so we're kind of chalking a few of these things up to branding at the beginning and driving traffic. But if we can't measure it, it's hard to manage it. So start there. That's number one. Number two, Search Console magic. So here's another one. So I already showed you that President Trump put the search engine results in the news for us this week. You know what else happened is that Search Console has always been my little magic bullet for most things. And Google went and changed the way it reports this last week. As a matter of fact, there's still clarification. So that was August 19th, August 29th. Just the other day is when I pulled this article. So as that's happening, here's the thing is Search Console is Google's webmaster, like their search engine optimization tool. And it was great. It's still great. It's just that all the reports have changed in it. So anybody who's been pulling regular reports, you probably have saw a drop that makes everything look bad. But really, the guts of it haven't really changed. But the reason it's important is because if we're trying to drive cost per lead down, what we were just talking about in our previous slide, you need to know how the user got there, right? And that's all private, said Google. So at first, when you use Google Analytics, you could see what all the terms were that people were searching for when they got to your site. Then it started getting truncated, right? Shortened a little bit. And then they started putting these not set, not available, or not given type results. Wasn't a big deal because it was only 20% of results and 30% of results. Well, then it started climbing into the 60s and 70s, and now there's some sites I look at and it's almost 100% of the results. You can't see what the people were searching for, and they cited privacy. Well, Search Console was their special tool where you could still see it, and right now you can still see great information in there. It will still give you queries. They are starting to take those super long ones that people write, the natural language things where people speak these long, weird sentences, and into search, and they're truncating those. So they do get kind of clustered, but at the same time, it's great information. It's just some of that user intent detail is hiding. So I still encourage you to set it up because it used to be our magic bullet. It was the easiest way to get the sitemap into Google, and you could see how many pages were being indexed, and you can still see that. But also it would give you error messages. It would say, like, we're having a problem with this and that. And so it's an easy way to keep your website healthy. I still encourage you to use it, but some of what we used it for in driving leads kind of changed. So that moves us to the next piece, which is the next way to generate leads is the no guess method. So if the first one was make sure you're measuring and tracking what you need to track and measuring it. The second one is use the Search Console because you're going to get some insights that are still what Greg Chambers calls free. So there are free insights. To get to where we can actually match user intent with what's on our website where we can help them, we need to go to this no guess method, which is investing. So we got to pay for it again. Invest in the keyword research. The good news is you'll get some impressions, you'll get some clicks, but you'll also get some insight. So Google Ads is the easiest way to do that. It used to be AdWords. They're changing that too. So there's always changes in this marketplace, but right now this is what we're doing. If you are buying leads, if I want the actual terms, not just the broad term, I've got to buy some ads. And when I buy the ads under keywords, under search terms, I can find what people are actually typing in. So I'm not going to try and just optimize in general, which I would do if I had unlimited budget, but instead I've got a limited budget. And so I want to focus in and actually try to pick people off in niches. There's less traffic and less competition. That's the reason why, right? It's why would I fight everyone for something like Mack truck radiators, which is where these searches were coming from, versus trying to pull something a little more specific in here, like, which was the one I was like, a 2012 Mack CXU 12 radiator. Much easier for me to compete on that because everybody's trying to be the Mack truck radiator up at the top there. So you have to do, the way you do it is you have to buy the ads. There's no free rides, and then you've got to harvest these terms. The good news is when you harvest these terms, one of the things that starts to show up as you come through all the different results is little things like this. Like you get early in the decision process, you can see where people are, like a bunch of how searches or what searches that are maybe not that close to buying, but they are maybe in your target market. We need to work through that. Where this came from is I used to run a little tropical shirt company, and we sold Hawaiian shirts. And the best term, if you had to guess, if we had to sit around a table and think, like, what are the best terms for people, for us to generate new customers online off of search, is Hawaiian shirts, right? So we were bidding on that term, Hawaiian shirts, but the best term for us ended up being tropical shirts. Probably not that unusual. The big challenge for us was that there wasn't enough traffic on the term tropical shirts to build a real business. So we had to find other terms. But one of the worst terms, if not the worst term for us, because it showed up all the time, so it cost a lot, but it didn't actually drive any activity, was the phrase Hawaiian shirt. Isn't that crazy? So Hawaiian shirts was okay. Tropical shirts was the very best, but Hawaiian shirt was not. We had a lot of reasons we could guess as to why that is, but if somebody typed in the word Hawaiian shirt without making it plural, they never bought, at least not from our site. So that's the power of, if you can find that, you know how to optimize and how to be useful to the user who's searching for those things. So the reason that works is number 4, which is segment. We want to put content for each stage in the buyer's decision cycle. So I said content for each stage. Boy, content per stage and cycle. Must have been in abbreviation mode there. Design your content for each stage in the customer's decision cycle is the big idea. It's because it's no longer buyer beware. If we remember early sales, even 15, 20 years ago, the Consumer Protection Agency would say, buyer beware. It's up to you to make sure that you understand what the information is. The way people make decisions has really not changed, right? We get presented with a problem. We have something we need to fix or something that we want more of, and we research. We find out as much information as we can on it, and settle on a few options, and then work towards actually making a purchase if that's the direction that we're going on that. The old way, sellers, our people, would get plugged in somewhere in that research options phase. The new way, right, with whether it's true, absolutely true or not true, the new way has us plugged in at the very bottom. Consumers and buyers, they think, right or wrong, that they can find all the answers as they work through the process by themselves. Going back to the previous search where we were pulling out the detail, if you think about all those searches as like how and what searches as research phase, then we can start to design content, right? If normally being late in the process down here, is the most expensive place to compete, right? Mack truck radiators, for instance. If I can compete up in here, which is earlier in the decision process when people are still trying to figure out what it is that they want and design content around that, then I can be more helpful. So let's take a look at that. I'm going to grab the search here, which is how to delete DPF and regen system on a DD15 Detroit. I don't even know what that means. But when you search for it, the first thing that pops up is something great, which is that special report, right? I love anything special report. Yeah, is that not clickable? That's a great page title for generating clicks. And Truck News is the one who thought about it. Or they probably did it on accident. But the first thing I noticed is that there's no ads, right? That if you look at those first 3 spots, generally that's where you would see ads. So nobody's buying this term. And why is that? Well, it's because it's way too early in the process. But we might be able to help them in that process, right? We could either build a merchant feed if we were selling an actual product. That's that shop on Google on the right-hand side. But otherwise, we can design content that is around those ideas. The challenge for most of us is that it's too early to start really pitching ourselves, but we can brand ourselves pretty well as being the knowledge experts early in the process. So special report, again, is excellent, but looking at the different ways people ask those type of questions and what those questions might relate to, you got to figure even though nobody's searching on this, there's millions of people that are still searching for something similar to this. And this is what the big robot, Google in the sky, is saying, hey, people are asking these questions around legal and illegal. Maybe you should put some content out for that. If this is, if you are in the DPF or EGR market. And again, I don't know if any of you do trucking, but I don't. So I don't really know what those mean. So shopping is still there. Google makes money on it, but this is what I mean by if you can segment for content in the decision process, that's how you can get better at driving more traffic, driving more leads through your website. Help people with their search, because in the end, they don't want to talk to us until the very end. So you could fight it or you can go with it and work through there. Okay, so that brings us up to number 5. So up to this point, what we've been talking about is, right, we talked about doing tracking. We talked about getting insight into who the people that come to our site are and how to find more of them. Now we get to this part where we're playing with how do we change the content on our website. We have a sister company, Go Leads, and on Go Leads, what we've been playing with is this tool called Drift, and it's a chat bot. So it's like regular chat, except for where you can build what they call playbooks, what I call little conversations. And if you think of that little guy right there, the little green man, as it could be, I guess, or green girl. It's a green robot. As your salesperson on the site, you can start looking at each one of these pages and testing ideas for where what the ideas are. So let me give you an example. On the Go Lead site, you can do business and consumer searches. So the business searches, in this case, I did a quick business search, and we were able to stick questions out, right? If you came to the website, the first thing that I really want to ask is this your first time here? If you've never been here before, what most people do is they define their market, right? They try to see if we have their market online. So that would be on the left. That's the lead in that we get. But if you complete the search, the question can change based on where the pages are. So if you think of this as dynamic content, we can learn from, right? This is what I think people are doing on the site, right? You can either revise it or you can email us to buy the list. But the question is, does the count look right? Because that would be the question that we would ask, on a quick survey around here. What question would you ask the person who just completed the search? And then the question is, what we ask them is, does that sound right? And if it sounds right, these are the answers to the question is, yeah, we can prompt these. So all these prompts are put in by us, so it's, yes, I want to talk to a human about it. That sends the user down one path. No, it doesn't look right. Sends them some information on how to revise the count and the way the database works. And then looks right, but I don't want to talk to anyone is, somebody who's just shopping, which is a lot of people on the website, maybe just doing research. And so based on that, we actually have a new research tool that we're working on internally that should be released. I just saw a preview of it yesterday and it's pretty exciting. But anyways, the idea is that we can quickly add content and information to the site. So if you're wondering what stage of the sales cycle somebody would be at to be on a page in your site, you can now ask. This is an easy way to do it. And so that's why we started it, is because I thought, oh, it's we don't really have the manpower to manage chat because we don't know anything about it. But and changing our site is a huge deal because it's a giant site and it's really it's got a big database behind it, so we can't mess around with it too much. There's thousands of pages. So we installed this bot, we pre-programmed a bunch of conversations, started with just need help, and then we have a bunch of different pages where we have different questions. So it is like our salesperson. It gets in there, and the interesting part is going all the way back to the Amazon, that dot thing being in my kids' dorm room, is they ask, people ask those robots. We tried to make it as obvious as we can that this is a robot. It's not a human being. But they ask all sorts of questions of the robot, expecting it to have an answer. It's not that smart of a robot, but what we can do is we can pull out all those questions, and they're very interesting to us. So I think I ended up with 500 questions inside of, 6 months. And it is giving us hints as to what we need to do to make our website more user-friendly and actually get those questions answered. So we pulled all the questions, and then it helps us be better with what we got, right? So we can answer the questions on our site. We have new places to put content. We can build new bots. But if we think about their decision process, this kind of helps with pieces of that. So I would encourage, there's other tools. I don't get anything from Drift by putting this out there, but theirs was the first one that I played with. They have a bunch of reasons why they think their tool is so great. We don't actually use half of it, but we do use these little playbooks. And what we found is that it's cut down. It has not decreased the number of leads that we've had, but it has decreased the number of inquiries that we were getting nowhere with. So I feel like the process is making it better, and it's an idea that it's an easy way to stick extra content out there when you're a marketer and you don't have full access to all of the things on your website, right? User-driven fixes. Is there anything better? I don't know if there is or not. So that's it. That was it. It was a quick 5. I'm at 27 minutes where I'm doing pretty good. So tracking goals to manage, right? Managing spend can be depressing at first, but it does get better the more you pay attention to it. It's right. It's cost accounting. This is what it is, and then we'd like to make it better. What are some things that we can do? And those are great conversations to have, and they're actually conversations that most of the C-level people love to have anyways. Search Console, hook it up. It's not quite as powerful as it was before, but it still helps you drive traffic to your website. And then you need to learn from that traffic, but that's why you're tracking. And then keywords, the easiest way to stop guessing is to actually pay for some terms and get into the details where Google will share them with you, and then place them into your customer's decision process, which is that one, right? Segment your content for each stage in the sales cycle. And then an easy way to put content that is kind of dynamic and you're not stuck with it forever on your website is to use the chatbot. People are more comfortable using these tools, talking to robots. You can set your own up. So that's what we have going. I'm checking the chat box. Nobody came in with any preconceived ideas. That's excellent. If you have any questions, by all means, you can throw them in at this time while I cover some of the things that you'll get for registering for this webinar. One of the things is my book, The Human Being's Guide to Business Growth. It is full of big ideas. And these big ideas you can use because that's just all it does. It just, it's an idea generator, but there's a little bit of how-to in there also. Bill Matern and I wrote a book called The Perfect Growth Formula. And this one is a lot more tactical and is really for interior conversations. I'm sitting at a conference table right now. And if you can imagine everybody sitting around the room, but we're at least on the same page because we're talking about lead generation and business, where new business comes from inside of a set framework. It makes for great conversations. And then our new tool, which is Lead Gen Compass. So you're going to be hearing from John is who's going to be giving you a call. John will give you a call and offer you an opportunity to set up a time to talk about your business and to talk about these ideas as they relate to your business. Like I said, this is number 6 of 12 topics that we're picking up. I don't have the schedule in front of me. Nui, I don't know if you remember what the next one's about, but you'll get a notice on the next webinar, but that's what these are for. These are ideas, and all these ideas are work that we actually do inside of Lead Gen Compass. We've figured out a way that we think is a good combination of cost effective and results generating. So there you go. That's a great 30 minutes before Labor Day. I don't see any questions. Hopefully this has been great. Oh, next topic is how lists work. Yeah, so we'll start to share some of our knowledge next time on lists themselves. We've been in the database business for many years, and there's a lot of different ways that we use them, and we will share them on the next webinar. So thanks for attending, and look for an email with the recording and a link to some of these free resources next. If you need to reach any of us, info@usfarmdata is the easiest way, and we'll talk to you later. Thanks.